Today we have yet another piece of shit at the BC garage. It's an 02 Blaster. Yes, I got the motor, it's over there, but this is the roller right here. It's looking pretty decent. It's got pretty clean shocks. It's got a clean FMF silencer on it. It's got street wheels on the back. The frame's kind of banged up, but it's savable. Pro taper bars, good seat cover. But we're gonna tear this thing down and do what we do. Top and bottom end motor rebuild. And we got this thing for next to nothing. So drop comments down below guessing how much I bought this thing for. Let's get the wrenching. The motor has definitely seen better days, but so have y'all, so chill out. We're gonna save this thing, tear it down, new cylinder, new head, new covers. Here is the kicker. Huh? You can see it's even got some good weight reduction. They use this cut piston. Looks pretty good. As y'all can see, the oil pump has not been deleted on this thing. That might have had something to do with why it failed, I don't know. The clutch basket actually looks damn near new. There is no pitting or grooves on this at all. All right, the clutch side is completely torn down. Now let's swap to the stator side. Oh, shit, that's JB well, man. Now I'm gonna use a flywheel puller and pull off the flywheel. Here it is. PB Blaster, please save me, PB Blaster. Man, these long ass stator screws, what the? Stator off. Pull the woodruff key out of the crank. Push out the wrist pin and pull off the piston. I don't know if you can see in there, but that is bits of the piston jammed up in the crank. All right, all the parts came in. It's finally time to assemble the bottom end. I got a fresh crank, bearings, piston, cylinder, head, everything. The bearings and the crank are in the freezer. I'm gonna let those sit for like 10 minutes, and then once I get them out, we can get going. All right, I just got the bearings out of the freezer. Now we're gonna heat up the case. All right, this one was a struggle to say the absolute least, but I got it in. As you can see, both crank bearings are now in. Now we can go ahead and pop in the crank seals. Remember, the spring or the open side is always facing the oil. So this is the right side and this is the clutch side. So the spring will be facing out like this. All right, right side crank seal is in. Install those the same way we did with the bearings. All right, now for the flywheel side crank seal, it is the opposite of the other side. So the spring is going to be facing the crank and this closed part is going to be facing the flywheel. Now I'm just heating up this bearing a little bit with this hot rod, and then I have the crank in the freezer. So I'm gonna give this a few more seconds and go run and grab the crank. Okay, that didn't fucking work, so I made a crank puller out of stuff I had in my garage with 2 tire irons, this big old washer, another washer, and then the flywheel. Just turn this, pull it in, whatever. Now we can take our transmission and install them as a set. What I'm gonna do on this main transmission is install an O-ring right here, so when it goes into the seal, it doesn't get caught in this groove and tear it. Now we can go ahead, attempt to drop these in without disrupting the seal too much. Now that we're in, make sure we lube all that shit up. Now I'm gonna pop in the balancer shaft. Just drop that down in there. Now I'm gonna take my first shift fork. This is the number 2, and the 2 is going to be facing down. This one's already lubed up. And then just slide it in between on that slider. Next is the number 1, which is gonna be going down here on the left. Again, number facing down. Get that down onto the slider, just like that. Then we're gonna take our shift drum and we're gonna drop it into its spot. We can move these out to the side a little bit to get it in there. And then once that's in there, put your neutral detent wherever that was. And then these little pins should line right up with the drum. Then we're gonna drop in our lubed up shafts when they are into the right spots. Drop that in. And then this one, the circlip will be facing up. So now we can go ahead and drop this guy in. I just went ahead and popped on my shift star so I can kind of go through gears, see where you're at, make sure you get the full range of motion. You're gonna have to turn the transmission. Go through all your gears, make sure you got them. Here's neutral, so I'm gonna stay right here. Now it's about time to put the cases together. So I'm just gonna pop this dowel pin in, and then we have to go around and clean up all this mess off here. And then we're gonna do a thin layer of Yamaha bond. I got some brake clean on the rag. Go around and wipe everything down. We want this to be perfectly clean. A little bit on the finger, do little dabs. We're gonna clean up all that mess. Go around where you have the globs and just dab it along. Get a thin layer over everything. Now, if you got anywhere where it shouldn't be, like the crank, just go around with a rag, wipe it off. It's not the end of the world. Get as much as you can off. Go ahead and give everything a little bit of oil so it goes on easier. Everything's just gonna get a little dollop. Now it is time to drop on our other case half. Line everything up. All right, a little bit of light tapping later and we were all sealed up. Now I have my cardboard with where all the hardware went so we can go and reinstall it. I'm gonna go around and do everything hand tight on the hardware, and then the torque is 7.2 foot-pounds. All right, we're all torqued down. Now we can move on to assembling the clutch side. I just got on the shifter thing that goes onto the star. Quick tip is to get the bolt started and tighten it down a good bit, and then try and get this spring back over here. If not, it's gonna fucking piss you off. Now I'm gonna stick the shift rod through, so I'm gonna grease up the end so it doesn't break the seal when it goes through or rip it and tear it. Now we're gonna do our kickstart gear. So we have our circlip with the sharp side towards the motor. Make sure that's fully seated in there. And then we have a washer, and then the gear. And then we have another washer, and then the final snap ring. Make sure you see it snap into the groove, just like that. And then we are in action. Make sure that's lubed up. And we're gonna take our Kickstarter and make sure that this part gets lined up in there. You're gonna have to wiggle it to get it onto the gear. And once that's dropped in there, we can wind our spring, put it in its hole. Now I'm just gonna throw on this crank holder. Now I'm gonna throw in the collar. I'm gonna use a socket to bang that on. Now we can install the gears over here. Actually, I'm going to turn the crank to get this up here and then put in our key. And then we're gonna install the drive gear. The dot right there is gonna face out. So line that up with your key. Slide it on. Now we have the primary drive gear, and this cutout side is going to be facing out opposed to the flush side. Slide that on. Now we're just going to screw on this nut hand tight. Now we're installing this gear. We have the key in there. Line that up, but this dot on this gear has to match up with this dot on this gear. So we have to work them together so that those dots match up just like that. And then for this one, we have our lock washer right here lined up, and then we have our nut. This one's going to 58 foot-pounds, and this one's going to 40 foot-pounds. So you got to jam this gear and torque them down. Now for our clutch, we have the concave spring washer. It's going to be facing away from the bearing. And then we have a spacer. Throw that in there. Going on with the basket, and you might have to turn it a little bit to line those gears up. Then we got that grooved spacer. Throw that on there. On with the hub. Line that up just like that. Lock washer. Make sure that that tab lines up with that groove right there. Go in with our nut. Go ahead and thread that on hand tight. Then we're going to grease up and insert the push rod, followed by the little ball. Then I'm just gonna pop in my actuating arm real quick. Now I got the clutch pack on with the ball and rod in there. And when you're gonna put your pressure plate on, there's a dot here and then a dot on your hub, and you have to line those up just like that. Now we can go ahead and put on all the springs. We're going to want to go in a crisscross pattern and just put them in lightly at first, very loose, just get them in there. And then once we have them all in, we can gradually go around and torque them down. Now we're pretty much ready for the clutch cover, but I'm actually gonna install an oil injection delete plate right here because I don't wanna do oil injection, so I'm gonna do that real quick. There we go, as you can see that's blocked off now. Just popped on the fresh gasket. Then I just lubed up the Kickstarter, and I can just slide this right on. Now we can just go around and tighten her back up. All right, I just screwed on the stator. Now it's time to put the flywheel on. I already put the key in there. Now you have to line up this keyway right here with that key and slide it on. Now the flywheel is slid on. I have to tighten down this bolt. All right, just torque that down. Now the flywheel is good to go. Now it's time to do the top end. When you're doing top end, always check your ring gap, put your rings down in your cylinder, push it down with the piston to make sure it's even, and measure that little tiny gap in there. Put the rings on the piston, start out sideways like this, and then wrap it around and get them on there. Okay, both rings are on. Then I'm gonna take my circlip and put it in on one side. All right, circlip is in on one side, opening facing up or down. My wrist pin bearing has been soaking in 2-stroke oil. Now I'm just gonna toss it into the rod. Then lube up your wrist pin, take your piston, make sure that the exhaust arrow is facing the exhaust. Stick it through the bearing and all the way through to the other side. Now brake clean wipe down your gasket surface. All right, now I'm just gonna do a little dab of Yamaha Bond right on the cracks. Take a new gasket and drop it on, and make sure your rings are aligned. Take your cylinder that has a clean gasket surface, and then we can compress our rings with one hand, make sure they're still aligned, and drop the cylinder onto the piston. Make sure you're lining everything up, make sure it's looking pretty even. Slide it all the way down just like that. Then I just threaded all the bolts on hand tight, and we're going to torque those down. All right, now that's all torqued down. I got some new head studs. I got to screw these in. Now we can take the head gasket and drop it on. Finally, we got the head gasket on. Jeez, I'm criminal. Hit that with some brake cleaner real quick. Same thing with the head, make sure it's completely clean. Now that we're lined up, we can hand thread on all of our bolts. All right, head's on, all torqued down. I'm gonna clean up my mess and then we can put it in the bike. As you can see, I got the motor in. I just kind of had one of those nights where you black out and just do all the work and I didn't record anything. I also decided to custom fabricate a bracket to fit on this Banshee rear caliper and master cylinder. Because these blasters, the old ones before 2002, normally come with cable rear brakes and it didn't come with it, so it's hydraulic rear brakes. It is crazy and it doesn't make any sense. I don't even remember how I did this or what I did, but it is working kind of. I don't really like brakes in the first place, but it does its job sometimes, so I guess it's time to kick this sucker. All right, so it's running and riding, but it came with a Chinese carb. And if y'all know us, you know how much we hate Chinese carbs, so I need to find an OEM one ASAP. Trying to tune this Chinese carb is like yelling at a deaf kid. It just straight up does not do what you tell it to. It's running good sometimes, running like shit some other times. I need to get an OEM carb on it ASAP. All right, it's like 3 days later and I messed around with a bunch of jetting. I still think I'm gonna go ahead and get an OEM carb or Electron, but for now it's running pretty good. I know this wasn't a crazy restoration or nothing, this is just an engine rebuild. We're gonna go through and make it look pretty later, but my girlfriend's gonna be riding this thing, so we couldn't make it too nice because she's probably gonna dump it a few times. But as you can see, we have way more builds in the works. We always have stuff going on, so subscribe, drop a like, let us know what y'all think we should do. Drop ideas for the next mods, new builds, new projects, anything y'all are thinking. Our videos are just gonna keep getting better and better. This is our second video, so subscribe to watch the journey and let us know what other builds y'all want to see in the comments.